Good morning and welcome to Morning Brew on Labour Social. I'm Graham Hughes. It is Monday, the 30th of October, 2023. It's nearly New. It's nearly New Year. It's nearly Halloween. Halloween's tomorrow. Don't know if you went to any good Halloween parties over the weekend. I went to a good one. It was all right. It was in Chester. It was all right. I'm in Liverpool this weekend. This week, sorry, and visiting family. It's half term. But what I wanted to talk to you about today is Labour's social media problem. And I think we can sum this up when we talk a little bit about, let's call it a comms problem, an issue with comms. And it comes from a couple of sources. First of all, the media in this country is heavily, disgracefully biased against Labour. They are a far right wing press that we have. We have a BBC that believes that if you have someone saying, looking outside and going, "Oh yeah, it's raining," you need to bring someone into the studio to think who says it's not raining, even though they've arrived absolutely soaking wet because they got rained on. So you got this false equivalence going on this sort of prestige channels on the BBC and stuff, and then you got the tabloid tittle tattle nonsense, and people who read the Mail and read the Telegraph don't really understand that that those are tabloids that they're reading. So Labour's got this adversarial press that it can't rely on to get its messages out in the same way that the Tories can. The Tories want to get their messages out. Well, they can go on GB News, be a presenter or be an interviewer, be interviewed by someone who is a Tory MP, and they could be interviewing someone who's a Tory MP. That's how they can get their messages out. Labour don't have that luxury. However, that aside, we have seen time and time again Labour either not capitalise on the use of social media, which is something that they really should be doing. Phil, who presents the show on Tuesdays and Thursdays, he has over 180,000 subscribers. By the way, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed and you'd like to comment, subscribe and then you can comment. But yeah, Phil has an insane number of followers compared with the actual official Labour channel on here on YouTube, which has about 47,000, I think. So, three times fewer, way more than three and a half times fewer subscribers on the Labour channel. And the reason being is they don't really put engaging stuff on there. What they put on there is nearly always just a party political broadcast, effectively, which no one wants to watch. People only ever watched party political broadcasts because they were on before the news came on like a Friday night or something like, oh, and what follows is the party political broadcast from the Labour Party. And yeah, I mean, it was just like, oh, just turn over till something else comes on. People don't want to watch that kind of stuff. What people want is engagement, is to have your comments coming up on the screen and having a chat and asking questions and hopefully us answering it or going away and researching and coming back a few days later with the answer, which never really happens, but we can aspire. But with Labour, they haven't capitalised on social media. Obviously, that they haven't even got a TikTok channel last time we checked. I think this might need to be updated. One of the steps in the right direction this year, which was suggested by someone not a million miles away from here, which was to have on their website a dedicated page to each and every MP with their photograph, bio, contact details, and also candidates in the upcoming election. So this is the candidate for, Liverpool West Derby, for instance. Oh, Ian Burns, our MP here in Liverpool West Derby, but yeah, no. If there was a candidate, it would be on the page. And it's not finished yet, and there's some duplicates, and obviously, like, it's not as been done by someone as sort of anal as I am when it comes to, like, getting all your ducks in a row. But it's a step in the right direction because that information should be out there. Because what happens is if you don't say anything, or you don't put anything into social media, you don't put anything else on YouTube, really, or on TikTok, or on Twitch, or on whatever's left of Twitter these days, Threads, you create a vacuum. And the Tories love that because they can fill the vacuum with anything they want. And this isn't just social media that they have a problem with. They have a problem with comms in general, but it's linked because if they used social media more effectively, then it would improve Labour's comms a lot. Case in point, last month, oh God, earlier this month. Oh my God, it feels like so long ago now. But after the invasion of, well, the terrorist attack, let's call it, into Israel by Hamas, Keir Starmer stood up at the conference and said Israel has a right to defend itself, and everyone said, "Yeah, great," and got a standing ovation because it just happened. Now there's a lot of people saying that Starmer should be calling for a ceasefire. And if you want to have a debate on that, that's fine. Have a look at mine and Phil's video that we did on Friday, the agenda, because I was very much coming from the point of view of I think that he should call for a ceasefire, and Phil was sort of explaining why he didn't think that that would be a good idea for political purposes. And I'm like, I think that he still should, but that's by the by. The fact is that by not calling for a ceasefire, by not condemning the actions of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, and the fact that the water and electricity and supplies have been cut off from Gaza, again created a vacuum in which people said, "Oh, well, why aren't you saying this? Why aren't you?" Which is fair enough, to be honest with you. But instead of addressing it properly, Starmer did, what he was advised to do. I guess I'm not defending him. He went to, was it the South Wales Islamic Centre? And he had a conversation. And then they put out a tweet saying, on behalf of Keir Starmer, he said, I went to this Islamic Centre and I had a wonderful chat and we all put the world to rights. And yeah, we all came away, condemning terrorism and saying that Israel has to conform to international law. And then the actual mosque in question put up a statement saying, that wasn't our experience. And you're just like, oh my God, why do it this way? Why not have an open forum that we can watch where people are invited to go along? That's a streamed live, where there's no case for one trying to spin it one way and one trying to spin it another. You just have what happens, i.e., he has a pre-prepared speech, maybe, or however you want to play it from the communications point of view. But instead of playing this like Chinese whispers game of like he said, she said, it's infuriating. But what's not infuriating is the £2 super chat from One Angry Pagan. Thank you very much, sir. Could this new podcast be a start? So I was going to come on to this. So there's been rumors that Keir Starmer's going to do a podcast, which I have slight reservations about. And the reason being is that when I talk about Labour doing better with social media, I don't necessarily mean that I want to have 3 Labour MPs sitting around the microphone having a chat, because they're not necessarily as engaging as other people might be in the same situation. I think there's enough social media commentators out there on the left who would love to have a role as the podcaster for Labour, and then they have those MPs on as guests and answer the questions and put the questions to them and have a bit of banter. Have a bit. I just can't see Keir Starmer making a podcast work. If he was going to be the presenter of it, or they were going to do what they do at the news agents, where it's got 3 presenters all talking to each other, I don't think it's necessarily going to work that way. But Labour need to do so much better in getting their message out to people and explaining what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I don't feel like they do that at all very well. A really good example earlier this year was when the Green member of the House of Lords, Baroness Jenny Jones. I don't know if she's a Baroness, but Jenny Jones of the Green Party wanted to bring in a fatal motion against one of the Tory bills that was going through. I think it was maybe the protest bill. Don't quote me. It's early in the morning. I've had to travel some way this morning and get set up here in Liverpool. Yeah, Phil did a great video explaining why Labour didn't support that fatal motion, and it made sense. Once I'd seen Phil's video, Labour didn't put anything out. They just went, no. And Wes Streeton, the idiot, no offence, Wes, lovely bloke, but sometimes an idiot, puts his tweet out going, well, if you don't want Tories to do horrible things, then you should vote for Labour next time. And it's like, that's really unhelpful. That's really, really unhelpful. Well, if you didn't want to graze your knee, you shouldn't have fallen over. Should you? When you think of that next time, it's like, not really helping. A bit of explanation on like why it would make no difference, and it was a bit perhaps a little bit of theatrics from the Greens, which is fair enough. It's the cut and thrust of politics. But one of the things, I'll just say thank you to Johnny Cophead for the £5 super chat. Thank you very much. Labour comms advisor still appears to be working as if we're still in the 70s. Very, very good points, Johnny. They haven't adapted to the new media landscape in any way, shape, or form. I don't think, or where they have, they've been very slow to do so. And there are a couple of MPs who make engaging content for TikTok, but like I say, there is no official Labour TikTok, which is ridiculous. The idea that they need to build a studio in London and have people going in and doing a podcast, I think it's not the best use of their resources. I think that a much better use of their resources would be to empower the people who are making this stuff anyway, especially getting in touch with Phil. I think that would be like my top of my agenda if I could say if I could talk to Labour comms and say, will you please get in touch with Phil Morehouse and get him to help you with getting this stuff out there, because none of his stuff is particularly high tech. It's quite straightforward. He just sits there and talks about what's going on, but he puts it across in a way that I can understand, that most people who aren't necessarily that engaged in politics can understand, which is great. And that's the problem that Labour have at the moment. They're only really appealing to, I don't know, Labour wonks. But when Phil does a video for this channel about NHS, Labour's NHS policy, and it gets a couple thousand views, and you think, oh, well, that's all right. It's quite a niche video, it's not going to get millions of views. We're not Mr. Beast, we're not Taylor Swift. But at the same time, like, Wes Streeting, not having a go at Wes Streeting too much this morning, but Wes Streeting put out a video around the same time where he was outlining Labour's plans for the NHS on the official Labour YouTube page, and it got hardly any views at all. It got less views than ours did on this channel, which is only a new channel, really. It's only been going for 6 months or so. So it is a big issue that Labour need to fight, because up to this point, I have been a little sort of reticent, should I say, to criticise Labour comms too much. I mean, we've made some jokes about it on the shows over the months, but realistically, Labour 20 points ahead in the polls, doing okay. Just do whatever you're doing. It's fine. It's not, maybe not what I would do, but it's fine. It's 20 points ahead. Number one goal at the moment. Starmer's number one job, his only job, is to get the Tories out. But then something comes along like the Israeli Gaza conflict, and it throws everything into disarray, because now you have councillors saying they're going to quit the Labour Party or have quit the Labour Party. We could be seeing a situation in which MPs, maybe even shadow ministers, start angling to leave Labour if Starmer doesn't book his ideas up, so to speak. And that's a bit of a worry. Because one of the things that the Tories don't have at the moment is unity. When they say they're going to publish the budget, they've got someone else saying, oh, we're going to, Liz Truss saying, we're going to publish an alternative budget. And unless your budget's like ours, we're not going to vote for your budget. And Tories have only got a majority now of 58. It only takes 30 of them to vote the other way, and that budget won't go through. The autumn statements won't go through. So one of the things that Labour could always cling to over the last couple of years is, like, we've got unity. We've got Keir Starmer, we've got Angela Rayner, we've got Rachel Reeves, and we've got Wes Streeting, Johnny Reynolds, and all these people who we're all united. We're all united together, and this is a big push of Starmer's, because obviously he had three jobs when he got elected. One, detoxify the party, done. Two, unite the party, done. Win the election. That's it. But number two is slowly, it's coming away a little bit, it seems, because of the response to what's happening in Gaza and in Israel. Events, my dear, events. I think the quote is of, like, things happen, and we've got another year, by the looks of things, of the Tories before they let us have a general election, even though they are officially less popular than syphilis. I mean, the fact that only 1% of 18 to 24-year-olds say they're going to vote Tory in the next election, and 3% of the population think the world is flat. That just tells you how unpopular an opinion the Tories hold, and the fact they won't let us have an election is absolutely abhorrent. If they were 20 points ahead in the polls, I would have some sympathy with them. I'd say, well, they seem to be popular. Why do we need an election? Even though I hate the Tories, but they have not a leg to stand on. They are people don't like them. People really, really, really don't like them. So yeah. Anyway, so that's my point of view on Labour comms and Labour social media. We're trying to do our own little bit here, but we want to stay independent. We don't necessarily want to get in with Labour in a way that me talking to you now has to go through Labour HQ. That wouldn't be ideal. I think you'll agree that wouldn't be ideal. And it would just slow everything down. We wouldn't be able to do live stuff like we do at the moment. And also, plausible deniability is important. So if we say something stupid, especially when we've had a few on the old Labour social on Friday nights, it doesn't reflect necessarily on the Labour Party. Maybe Labour voters, but not the Labour Party. But yeah, a year, no, says Plumduff. So I'll jump into the chat. Yeah, it looks like a year. There's a huge portion of us who are now disillusioned with voting anymore and want a full-on revolution. Yeah, the thing is, we live in a deeply conservative country. And even though people are sick of the Conservative Party, big C, the little c conservative mindset is entrenched in the older generations who own their own homes or have nearly paid off their mortgages. They are not going to put anything at risk by mounting a revolution. And young people are so just absolutely under the cosh because you've got people who are in a relationship. Both of them are working. Both of them are working more than one job. They're still having to use food banks because their jobs are just paying for the rent, the extortionate, energy costs. Their rent's gone up. And today, HSBC posted record profits of nearly £8 billion in the space of 3 months? Was it a quarter? 8 billion? Jesus, that's profit. And they were like, well, we're very glad to, reward our shareholders. I'm just thinking, I'm glad someone's enjoying the end of the world. But yeah, the point being that young people have so much stuff going on and they're at a point where they can't actually afford to get on the housing ladder, have children, do the things that the older generations took for granted. Our parents' generation, they could buy a house and raise children on one income. One income. Could you imagine what big? I know, crazy. I know. And so you've got that old generation, and there's a lot of them. They're called the baby boomers because there was a population boom, and yeah, I just can't see having enough people who really want to change things to have a revolution. I think that if that was going to happen when we had 1 million people protesting against Brexit on the streets of London, it would have happened then. But all those people were lovely people. They were maybe a bit too lovely because we didn't get what we wanted, and we had 1 million people we possibly could have done if we had marshaled our forces in a slightly different way, should we say? But yeah, lovely old couple just marching along with a placard saying bollocks to Brexit, and you're like, oh hello, would you like a cup of tea? I'm thinking, yeah, this isn't the revolution that I thought would. That is not quite what I thought it would be. And also, there's a serious point to be made here as well, that revolutions are usually violent. And they're not always violent. We've had the Velvet Revolution. The Glorious Revolution of 1688 in the UK wasn't particularly violent. Sorry, in England. It's before the UK, wasn't it? Well, yeah, it was before the UK. But yeah, it is a bit of a situation where if violence occurs, I wouldn't want to be on the side causing the violence because innocent people get caught up in violence, as we're seeing in Gaza and Israel, particularly in Gaza this weekend. And I just want to touch on something that happened this weekend as well, just to mention it because it usually, like celebrity deaths, I just go, oh well, they were getting on, or they had a good innings or whatever. But there are a few, and there's not many, but there's a few where I've really been hit hard by them. And Douglas Adams, who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, John Peel, Rick Mayall slew me when he went, and David Bowie, and Carrie Fisher, who played Princess Leia as well. But losing Matthew Perry this weekend. possibly, we don't know the details, but he drowned in a swimming pool, or it was his jacuzzi. So he may have been intoxicated. Don't know. Really heartbreaking. Really heartbreaking. I'm one of those generation who grew up with Friends and obviously identified with Chandler because he used to make jokes, inappropriate jokes to cover his nervousness, which is what I do. But yeah, we all saw a little bit, I think, of ourselves in those characters, and it feels like we've lost someone that we knew, even though we didn't know him. But it does feel like, even though he's playing a fictional character. But yeah, a big loss. But Robin Williams as well. When we lost Robin Williams, I was absolutely devastated because it's Robin Williams. Like, what? And all I can think when these things happen is, why the hell is Rupert Murdoch still alive? He's like 907 years old. Just go already. Just, just close your eyes and disappear like Yoda. A little horror. Anyway, violent revolution also destabilizing and tend to lead to a worse regime getting into power. That is very true, Maggie Pie. We saw that in Iran. We saw that in France with Napoleon. Yeah, I mean, we saw that in Russia with Stalin. Yeah, I agree. It causes instability and causes baddies to take over. So yeah, I am a believer in democracy. It just upsets me that it's okay. Upsets is probably the wrong word. It's very confounding that this country, if we are going to be democratic and we're going to allow people to vote if they want to vote, and don't force them to if they don't want to vote. I had this conversation a lot where I just say, I don't want to force people to vote because I lived in Australia and they don't always vote the way that you want them to because they're not politically engaged. They don't really care. So it's like, it's not good enough just to say you have to vote. You have to get people politically engaged. If they're not politically engaged enough to vote, don't try and get them to vote. What you want to do is get the people who will vote out to vote for your party, and the people who are planning to vote for the other party to stay at home. That's a big part of winning elections. Anyway, Johnny Cophead, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. Ronnie James Dio, his Bobness, only the good die young. Yeah, that's true. 70s had the fairest least difference between highest and lowest pay. That's from Irene. Yeah. One angry pagan. Many of us who are between 18-30 are having to stay with parents, even in the shires, because rents are too high. Labour must solve this. Yeah, it is a huge priority. And if we are going to move into a more rented reality, I mean, Germany, they don't have such an they don't just put such an onus on house ownership as they do here. But so a lot more people rent. But if we are going to move to a model where people don't actually buy their own property, they just rent instead, that's fine. But I want to do away with private landlords. I think that if you rent a property, it should be social housing, i.e. it's owned by a trust that is part of the council wherever you live, and you pay money each week as your rent if you can. If you can't, obviously you'll get rent assistance. But that money is put back into society. It's not put into the bank accounts of already rich people, because that's the problem at the moment. We're seeing this massive transfer of wealth from us, normal people, to the wealthy and the super wealthy and the disgustingly wealthy. People talk about trickle-down economics. What do billionaires do when they make their 100th billion? They don't spend it on children's centers in Afghanistan. No, they spend it on space rockets. Yeah, because men. And raging, says Vendetta. Well, yeah. So, just think, if Starmer is like this now with Occupy Palestine, what will he do when elected and feels like his views have been endorsed? Well, the thing is with Starmer is that he is a human rights lawyer. No, he was a human rights lawyer, and he got people off the death penalty. It can't be stressed enough, this. He should be better at dealing with the language around Gaza and Israel and Palestine. He should be better, because he knows better. And the question you got to ask yourself is, do you want the Tories in for another 5 years? Or even better, can you survive another 5 years of the Tories? If the answer is yes, bully for you. Do what you like. But there's literally millions of us who will not survive another 5 years of this. We need them out. And although Starmer is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, he is a damn sight better than the Tories. And I said this on Sunday Brunch yesterday. If you watch Sunday Brunch, I was on it yesterday with Aid. Yeah, the Tories have no accountability and no accessibility. Labour do. Labour have got accountability. They will be held to account, not just by us, not just by Labour Social Phil and the Super Tansky. They're going to be held accountable by every single media outlet in this country, because every single media outlet in this country absolutely hates Labour, pretty much, with the exception of the Mirror. It's the only publication that doesn't seem to openly be hostile to anything Labour do. And blessed Samhain for the next 3 days. That's from one angry pagan. Yeah, and happy Halloween to the rest of us. It's quite fun. This I was at a Halloween party at the weekend, and I'm going to a kids' Halloween party tomorrow. Should be fun. In my terrifying BoJack Horseman costume. Anyway, I think you'll think a country would want the most able people contributing to running their country, but instead we have politicians. Well, yeah, but they're the people who want to do the job. And I'd rather people who go into politics did it because they wanted to make things better for people. But unfortunately, and especially with the Tories, they don't want to make anything better. They don't want to improve things. They just want to feather their nests. That's all they want to do. They just want to make loads of money, which is why I don't believe that Rishi Sunak is going to allow us to have an election before he gets the UK-India trade deal through. Because as soon as that goes through, he's going to get a pile of gold from his emphasis shares, and he's going to be very happy about that. He'll get a massive bung. I could see. Oh shit, Graham, you on Sunday Roast. Sunday Brunch is a Channel 4 show. Thank you very much, Darian. See, I'm forgetting what shows I'm on now. Sunday Roast with Maximilian Robs Pierre, and I'm with Alex Political X. Thanks, Graham. I'm private landlord. I'm not raised my rent in 15 years. My tenant seems very happy. I treat people like I'd want to be treated. That's great, Plum Duff. That's awesome. But there are a lot of landlords out there who are making life pretty uncomfortable for their tenants, who I feel deserve more rights than they do at the moment. I think the fact that we still have Section 21 no fault evictions is abhorrent. That you can literally throw a family out onto the streets with 8 weeks notice in this current climate. I mean, you're trying to look after your kids, you're trying to work, you're trying to juggle all the things that you got in life, you're trying to do the bloody dishes and keep the house clean, and then suddenly it's like, oh, you got to find somewhere else to live. You've got 2 months, clock is ticking, tick 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 tick. I just, yeah, somewhere where the rent is reasonable, and what if you got a pet? What if you got a dog? And everywhere you go, they're saying we don't allow pets, and you're like, oh my god, what am I supposed to do with my beloved pet? I mean, there's a lot of factors in this, but I do believe that we should move towards having social housing where new houses are built and they are owned by the local authority. And some of them are for rent, but you can just rent them, and some of them are proper social housing where the people living in them are such low incomes that they get rent assistance or don't have to pay any rent at all. That would be great. That would be my preference. And also, it would create socially diverse areas, because it wouldn't just be, here's the poor area of Liverpool where all the poor people live, and then down the road that's the rich people, rich part of Liverpool where all the rich people live. Ha 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 ha. Never the twain shall meet. You'll have a better social mix, which is important, because one of the things that we need to do over the next few years is look at rebuilding our communities, which have been torn apart by the Tories, because they don't care. They don't care about the communities. They don't care about engagement with people. They only care about engagement with their millionaire backers. And it is a bit rich that every time Sunak stands up in Parliament, he says, "Oh yeah, Labour, they're union." He talks about their union paymasters, and I'm like, I would much rather have a political party that is funded by unions than a political party that is funded by Russian oligarchs. Just me. I know. Crazy, I know, but it's just the way I feel about it. I don't always agree with Graham, as some has noticed, but at least he attempts to tackle points raised in the chat. To be fair to him, oh, thank you very much, BUFC, Mike. Says, I don't think people mind Starmer as PM. Labour should have chosen a better leader. He's not Corbyn, at least. This is reflected in the polls. And that's the thing. I mean, Starmer's job isn't to be charismatic. He's not. Starmer's job isn't to be, this bold new vision for the future necessarily. His job at the moment is just not to scare the Tory voters. And there's lots of them. Got to appreciate how many Tory voters there are in this country. Still, even today. I mean, none of them are the young people. It's like none of those. But no, older people who have voted Tory all their life. I'm not going to make any exceptions in the next. They're not going to vote Labour in the next election. They're not. They're not. I mean, the number that will, they're a minority. Most of them will stay at home. Most of them will just be like, I always vote Conservative, but I won't vote Conservative in this election, which is pretty much the same situation that we had back in 2019 with Labour, where Labour voters didn't go out and vote. That was a big problem for Labour at the time, especially as a lot more people were politically engaged at the time. So actually, if you look at the numbers of people voting Labour, it was incredibly high. But the numbers voting Tory was higher, unfortunately. Anyway, One Angry Pagan, liking the sound of new towns and such. Yeah, I think that's something that's got to be done. And also clearing the way for people, NIMBYs, stopping houses being built who are generally Tories. They're the same ones who whinge about wind farms, the same ones who whinge about solar panels in farmers' own private fields, which is just something that blows my mind. Anyway, I've got to get going now. So thank you very, very much for watching the show this morning. I will be back on Wednesday with Morning Brew. But before then, we'll have Phil Morehouse here at 9:30 tomorrow for Morning Brew. So catch that if you can. Big thank you to Gary Arnold for the £2 super chat. And until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.